Welcome. This is the Bastl Kastle, and I'm going to be running through this just in real time. And excuse my kids screaming in the background. Bye. Okay, so as you can hear there, it's some pretty chaotic stuff. I'm just going to unpatch everything and just go through a very sort of quick walkthrough as this synth returns to some semblance of normalcy. It's very interesting. I think one of the things that's really immediately apparent using it is that if you've kind of got into modulus or you're thinking about it, this is kind of a really like low rent version of kind of getting into modular synthesis. It's about £90 a unit. You can get a Eurorack version, but of course that then assumes that you've already bitten the bullet and actually gone into Eurorack. But if you haven't, then this is a great little unit to get. It's got a lot of patch points. So anything that has a square around it that you see is essentially an output, and anything that's not bounded by a square is an input, so a modulation point. And you use these little, they give you 10 of these really small kind of jacks. As you can see, it turns into a bit of a forest. When I've seen them when I've seen them in when you see the Bastl videos, they're nice colourful cables, but they seem to be the grey ones here, which is a bit shame, really. Essentially, you've got the oscillators. There are two oscillators. They're against each other, so they have what's known as a complex relationship. So they're complex oscillators with one modulating the other. So that it's very much similar to the complex oscillators that you would see in from like Buchla synthesis in terms of the Buchla synths and things like Make Noise DPO or the Verbos complex oscillator, Bresno by Fractals, the Further generator, endorphins, and so on. But really, you can simulate the advantage of complex oscillators is essentially that there is cross modulation. That's really the difference. And it tends to be hardwired from the sort of the get-go. So we can have some, like here, like the wave shaping is already hardwired in, so we can manually set that. You can manually set the pitch modulation here. Things like the LFO down here needs to be patched into something. So there we go. So it basically has three synthesis modes, and there's also another three modes that come off of the secondary oscillator. But let's just concern ourselves with the primary oscillator output. So those three modes. So where nothing. So this is the mode patch point here. So where we are only when nothing is patched in, this is mode 1. So this is what's known as phase modulation. That's the synthesis type that we're looking at here. So that's phase modulation. So by patching something like from this one here to here, it will change the mode. So patching into the minus will give us a new mode. So here we go. Patching into the plus will give us new modes as well. And that's how you sort of change the modes. But the modes can be modulated here with the LFO. Which means it's switching the modes quite rapidly. So let's start with something sort of simple, modulating the wave shaper. Bastl recommends, so you've got three different waveforms here. You've got actually you've got four. You've got the triangle wave, which is the one down here. So as well as the triangle wave, so I'm just going to move my camera over. I think I bunched it. You've got your triangle wave here. You have a pulse wave, which essentially has the duty cycle is variable here, and then you have a square wave. And then finally what we have here is the other oscillator out. So having an audio source rather than a modulating source, like a triangle wave, means that you can do more kind of audio rate modulation. Let's not go there right now. Let's try this. So we're going to do the LFO to modulate the wave shaper. Now Bastl recommend that actually that the lower the knob is set, the more sort of noticeable the oscillation is in terms of the modulation. Whereas the more it's set to the clockwise, you actually don't get any modulation at all. So you can control, so it kind of acts like an attenuator in some ways. Let's say we've got a really huge modulation like that one, but we'd like to control it. So we can just feel it sort of on the edges, on the fringes of the, like there, right? Whereas if we go anti-clockwise, its effects are more deeply heard and felt. So on this side here you have a rate modulation, which means we can modulate the modulator. And again, that modulation rate can also be controlled as well. So one of the ways of cross modulation. So we're going to take the oscillator out here. We're going to patch it into the rate modulation. So now the oscillator pitch is sort of cross-modulate each other. So let's take another modulation source. So we're going to take another, so you've got 3 for the triangle. So here we're going to do the pitch modulation, which is up here. As you can see on Bastl's the legend thing, you can see that it's pointing, which one points to which modulation destination. So that's helpful, just in case. Just in case we forget where we are. I think sort of, happy accidents like that, once you patch things up and move them around, come up with really interesting sort of sound sources. I mean, one of the reasons why I think it's really good for kind of everyone to kind of consider getting a unit like this is that you can have it sort of modulating itself. You can set up, you know, some pretty wild kind of patches, have it modulating itself, and essentially record the output. And the outputs can then be further edited for samples. They can be edited for waveform cycles in terms of things like sort of granular synthesizers. You can have them for the wave type sort of synths that you will have in your at the various VSTs like Serum and so on and so forth. And you'll be able to sort of feed it or gather new kinds of ideas. I don't think necessarily you're going to use it to generate your pitch-based information, though you could try and you could do that. And if you go to the Bastl website, you'll find some interesting situations where they have it with things like a pocket operator, right? And they'll have it with a pocket operator, and they'll both be happily coexisting together, and sort of generating interesting sounds and ideas. But what I think something like this also does is it sort of teaches you some really sort of fundamental principles about synthesis. You know, it's not all Moog, it's not all that sort of East Coast, here's a filter, blah 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 stuff. You know, and if you're really interested in kind of exploring sounds and synthesizing new stuff, then this is a good place to sort of start and sort of extend your appreciation, I suppose, as a way of considering it. The wave folder is a really interesting you know, timbral sort of shaping device. Let me take the modulator off there. Yeah, how important that was in terms of shaping the sound, right? Okay. So one of the other things that the synth has, it has a stepped output as well, modulation source output. And the stepped output is kind of based around Rob Hordick's Rungler. So it's kind of a step. So let's put that into the wave shape as well. Let me turn that up. that's the third mode, which is a kind of a noise mode. I mean, it's pretty destructive, let's face it. Track and hold. It really is a synthesizer and a lot of difficulty. So you can hear there, the triangle wave, LFO, is modulating the pitch, which is here. To get that kind of fluttery vibrato. So this is the timbre modulation. Now, the thing is, quite a lot of these patch points have, for each of these destinations, for modulation destinations, have up to 3 ports, which does mean that you can mix a number of... Let's try a different one than that, shall we? Let me take that one. It's amazing how you just take one out and suddenly it's like something vaguely resembling normal returns. So let's say we take the triangle wave from here and put that into the timbre mod, which is that one there. And just turn that down a little bit more. Sometimes you don't want to listen to it going through its business. We take the oscillator output here, and then we put that into the second one. So you can hear that that's already dramatically changed the sound. So this timbre mod is being modulated both by the LFO here and by the output of the second oscillator. So they're in some ways competing with each other, sometimes arriving at some sort of agreement and sometimes not. To which then you might choose to add something stepped, to the wavefolder, right? And because it's stepped, it sort of has a bit of a rhythm to it. That's a cool one. Now what we can also do, because we've got 2 outputs from the oscillator, here, this second oscillator, we can take that output and then feed that into the bit in, which is going to change the relationship of the stepped output. You can hear it moving around. I'll take it out. But we could also use one of the square waves here, which then gives you that every time we change the LFO rate here, you get these different stepped outputs, and then chaos returns. Cycling through, it arrives at points where you go, actually, that works. If we had this in record, and we were capturing it, then we could then go through this and edit it in Ableton, stick it in the wavetable synth, treat it as a sample. So nothing else has changed other than the bit relationship that's coming into. At least I think that's a change, unless of course I've knocked it, which is very easily done, right? Now there's also an LFO reset, which is just here, and you can use one of the square wave or pulse wave outputs to act as an LFO reset, which means that the speed of the reset will be dependent upon the LFO rate, but this in turn is influencing all of the modulation and also the reset. So this is those kinds of aspects of cross-modulation that complex oscillators provide you, because everything's kind of in, you don't need any additional modules to be able to try this sort of approach. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a guitar. The batteries are dying. Here, you can return it quite easily to something that sounds a little bit more conservative in choice. So we've still got the Rungler, sort of the stepped output. If we take out the LFO reset, back in, and hear the difference that makes, especially in the higher modulation rates. So as you can hear, there are a lot of possibilities, even in a unit of this size. And as I've mentioned, it is pretty reasonable. It's about £90. And if you are sort of hovering on the fringes and thinking, should I do modular synthesis? Maybe this is a good place to start. It is a good source of interesting sounds, but you'll also be able to work with and understand a variety of different synthesis techniques. And really, in many ways, one of the most important sort of techniques to kind of grapple with is this idea of modulation sources and cross modulation, because this is where you sort of go into new territories, as it were, without trying to get too hyped in terms of sonic territories, but you kind of enter into those kinds of realms. I don't think it's right to kind of get into modular synthesis if you just kind of want to recreate a Moog. Really, you may as well recreate a Moog. I think, you know, I understand why people want to go down that road, but there are all of these other amazing synthesis approaches that are actually available to us. And in some ways, if you are umming and ahhing about doing Eurorack or modular synthesis, it might be better to kind of go and get one of the semi-modulars, like the Behringers, like the Model D, or any of those sorts of ones. They've got some fantastic synths coming out at the moment. But if you're really into something that will give you a less straightforward and less conventional sounds, then this is definitely one of those units that you should look at. It's not going to break your bank, and it's going to give you lots of enjoyment as you explore interesting approaches, as you learn to love the sound that comes out of these things. Okay, until next time, remember to like and subscribe, and there'll be a few more of these. Bye for now.